Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. Welcome back to another episode of Your Brand Amplified. And I'm Annika Jackson here today with Patty Buccellato, Refined Images. Patty, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Annika. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm so excited because this is a topic we haven't really covered on the podcast. I can't say that about too many people. So thank you for being here.
For sure. My pleasure.
You are an image consultant. You've presented at multiple conferences, fashion groups, business owner conferences. You have a BS in fashion merchandising, a minor in journalism, and you now are an image consultant helping people be their best selves. So rather than me share more about that, I'd love to hear about your journey. When did you get interested in fashion? And then how did you decide to go into this field?
So answer to question one was probably when I was about 4 years old. I was actually thinking about this recently. There was a very clear memory I have about my mother helping me get ready. There was going to be a family party or something. And I just remember standing at the closet and I had to look way up, of course. And she was holding up, choices of dresses that I would put on. And I remember having an opinion about what I was going to wear. So I think it was just in my blood. Great-grandmother was a seamstress. My mother used to teach sewing, and I learned to sew when I was a kid. And
wow.
And just kind of followed through on there. So I do have to say it's probably in the blood. And how did it unfold? So, in a bit of a roundabout way, although my undergraduate degree was in fashion merchandising, it wasn't always, again, an area of interest. But I had an accidental career in advertising when I was first out of college. And, the good thing about that is I learned a lot. So many of us who are self-employed, we need skills in all areas. And I don't know if I would have had the same level of ability to market my business had it not been for that phase of my career.
Wow.
But while I was in advertising, I remember I was in my late 20s, and I remember sitting down at my teeny tiny little table in my teeny tiny little apartment that I could afford at the time. And I made out a list on a yellow legal pad of what the service would look like that I would offer. And in my mind, it was going to be kind of, a side gig. And, I would go into women's homes and I would help them in their closets and help them find a wardrobe that suited them and style them and do all those kinds of fun things. Fast forward about 20 years, and that's actually what I was doing in my business. So a testament to the importance of, we hear so often about putting your goals in writing.
Oh, yes.
I had completely forgotten about that list.
Oh my gosh.
On that yellow legal pad until just a number of years ago, I was clearing out boxes of stuff in storage and I found it. And I looked at it and I read it and I went, oh my goodness, this is what I...
Wow. So you started it as a side business and then it just kept getting busier and busier. And you said, okay, I have something. This is what I'm meant to do.
Well, the interesting thing was I thought I would build it as a side business and it never actually happened. It wasn't until I was out of advertising into another career. I was working with a direct sales company in the corporate environment. And at the time, I'm going to date myself here because this is when business casual was a new phenomenon in the corporate work environment. And I was working with a law firm that was really struggling with how to make that adaptation and maintain professionalism. And I had been working with them because the company that I was associated with had an image program that I provided to clients as a courtesy.
Wow.
And this client asked, we need more. Can you expand on this?
Okay.
And I thought, well, I can't with this program because I don't own it, but I can create my own. And that was the beginning of Refined Images. I was initially doing a lot of corporate presentations for employee groups on professionalism in the workplace. And over time, did a lot more advanced study on personal design and color and those sorts of things, and began to work with private clients as well.
Wonderful. What you wear, how you show up is your brand. So it's a very important part of putting your best foot forward, no matter what you're doing. If it's your personal life, volunteering for an organization, working, going in to pitch a new potential client or investor. So what are some of the first steps that you take with somebody? I believe you might have some assessments or things that we can also put in the show notes for people to look at. But where do people get started? Because I think that's also with the confluence of the workforce changing in terms of working from home. A lot of people wearing something more professional on top now, but we're in sweats on the bottom. But then when you go into the office or make that transition, I definitely think this is a hot topic and something that's really important for people who are just even joining the workforce or might not have been around in the time that we were in, where we had to dress a little more professionally before the office casual started coming in.
Yes. And, you nailed it, Annika, when you said that, it is our appearance is our brand. And so many people undervalue the power in how they show up visually. In particular, I work with a lot of coaches and consultants and speakers and authors and, people who are self-employed and as well as corporate teams. And I think even more so for those who have their own brand, it's really important to really capitalize on the opportunity of expressing that brand at every turn, wherever they show up. In a corporate environment, the expectations are often more clearly defined by the organization. Right? And that varies by industry. And so I would say the first step for anyone who's looking at, how do I tighten this up? How do I nail this image so that I'm projecting the message that I want to portray to others? Is to first consider their goals. Again, if they're in a corporate environment, there are certain parameters that are established for them and what the expectations are. And there might be a written, some people, even now when they go into the office, the former dress policies, they just don't really have the merit that they once did.
Right.
But there tends to still be a reputation by industry. People have perceptions of what an accountant looks like compared to, for instance, an interior designer. And we have the ability to express to others what we do, what we stand for, who we are in the world before we even open our mouths. And very often the impressions and interpretations, we've heard how many times, all of us, you never have a second chance to make a first impression and it's formed within the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And all of that is very true and real based on how the eye delivers input to the brain's cortex. It's very fast. So we do by nature. Some people don't like this. It's like, well, it's judging. It's like, well, our ancestors taught us to be wary of our environment. And it was a survival tactic, to really just take in what's around me. Am I safe? And I interpret as quickly as I can with the visual cues. So we do have tremendous opportunity to make sure that's in alignment with what we want others to know about us.
Yeah. That's really important. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know who they are or how they want to show up or what's going to be, quote, appropriate depending on the situation. I teach grad students. Some of them have full-time jobs, but a lot of them are still figuring out what they want to do next. So how are they going to present themselves when they're interviewing and looking for their next job or their next opportunity?
Yes. Yeah. And that self-review, that self-assessment is the critical beginning, right? What are my values? What do I want to express? How do I, even before knowing what it is that you do, right? Because we can reflect what we do based on how we appear, but even taking the step prior to that. What do I stand for? And what kinds of assumptions would I like people to make about me so that they get an accurate impression of who I am?
Yeah. Yes. And I'm looking at you and I should have put some lipstick on. Maybe I had my jewelry on before we got on this. But because you have this beautiful necklace on, you have the pop of color with a suit that gives some texture. it's very apparent to me who you are, right? So I love that. And I love that you bring that to other people and help them figure that out. And did you find yourself that the way that you dressed or the way that you showed up changed depending on your work environments, going from the ad agency to the law firm to being an entrepreneur and helping individuals with their, I don't want to say fashion, with their style, with their image?
Yes. Yeah, it is. And style and image are both appropriate because they one plays off of the other, right? Mm-hmm. And style is what we put on. Fashion is what's the particular type of clothing, and style is how we wear it. Create our own personal style. But I had a couple of very direct experiences of my own that really highlighted that importance of appearance and perception. And actually, when I was beginning in advertising, straight out of college, I had taken a position in the advertising department of a fashion retailer. Oh. And when that opportunity expired, I had moved to a new area for the position. And so when that ended, I had moved back to my home area. I'm in the Metro Detroit area and was looking for a new position. And really in the Metro Detroit area, and this was in the 80s, a job in advertising meant working in advertising for one of the automotive brands.
Oh, yes.
And so this is the accidental advertising career piece that I'm talking about. So I did end up at an ad agency for one of the automotive companies, and I took initially a secretarial position. We had secretaries back then, actually, believe it or not. And it was still of the time that you would take an entry-level position to get into an organization and then prove your merit. In order to move into another role. And in the beginning, I didn't catch it myself initially, but I was dressing as a secretary.
Okay.
And there was a distinct difference between the way the secretaries dressed and the way the executives and the professionals on the team dressed. It took me a couple of months to realize that I had relaxed into a role with my immediate coworkers. And I said, wait. If I want to be seen as this postgraduate professional, then I need to show up the way the others in those roles show up. And I flipped the switch on that. Wow. And it was very interesting that it didn't take very long before I was suddenly taken more seriously by those who were responsible for hiring in the other positions.
Nice.
So it is, as career coaches say, you want to dress for the role that you want to be in rather than the one that you currently possess.
Yeah.
And power and perception.
It brings me back to the mid to late 90s. And I was a club promoter and I worked for a marketing firm in nightlife promotions. And I just moved from Chicago to LA and started working at a magazine. And like you, I knew I was going to eventually probably move into the marketing department, but I knew I had to do whatever job was offered at the time just to get my foot in the door. So I was the front desk, greeter, admin. We did not have voicemail. I had to take every message by hand.
Remember those days.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I remember because I was transitioning from being a club promoter and that kind of person and working for a very cool, hip magazine. I definitely wore things as the secretary that I wouldn't have worn if it were a more corporate environment as a secretary. I try to bring a little bit of that fun and that Hollywood vibe. Now I look back and I'm like, how did I get away with wearing that at work? but as I transitioned to other roles, started helping with the accounting, started helping with circulation, subscriptions and marketing, and then having to go present to advertisers, I definitely had to change the way I dressed, or even transitioning from doing a lot of volunteer work and nonprofit volunteerism to other segments and going back to the workforce. Those were also shifts that I had to make. And then coming out of the pandemic, another shift, right? It's not just a one and done. This is something we have to constantly refine based on where we are and who we want to be, as you said. Yeah.
And coming out of the pandemic, I mean, that's one of the few universal shifts in workplace dress, right? And it has been, quite a journey for everyone. And now being on the other side of it, I'm often working with private clients who not only did their workday lifestyle change, but they're finding themselves in a post-pandemic body that wears a different clothing size than perhaps beforehand. So there's a lot of angles to address when you're, figuring out, okay, what is now? What works now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've looked at your website and some of your testimonials, but I'd love if you want to share a couple of examples of clients that you've helped really find who they are through the power of what they wear.
Yeah. Most recently, I've been working with a delightful client who is an executive in the healthcare industry. And very talented, well accomplished, and was actually referred to me by a former client of mine. And they had a conversation, and she realized that her appearance wasn't saying everything about her that it could, and wasn't presenting her in as positive a light or as high professional as it could. And so we were working together over the course of several months, and we just recently had our wrap-up session. And one of the things that she said to me, and we worked on wardrobe, on selecting style that related to her body type. And we look at color that's flattering, both on camera and off, because so much of our work now, on camera work used to be for, television workers, right? And
now it's every day.
Now on camera work is for all of us, right? And we worked with color and hair and makeup and, the full gamut. And one of the things that she said to me is that she had the confidence in her skills and talents, her capacities, but there was always something that when she would sit around the boardroom table, she wouldn't quite feel a part of or on par as equal with the rest of the group, because she didn't feel that she had that professional presence.
Wow.
That overall executive presence. And the greatest testament to the journey that she has made is that she said, now I sit down and I feel like I deserve a place at that table on all levels. And, it's lovely to see that kind of transformation, because sometimes it's because we simply didn't give it attention, or there's a journey that one can take in their profession where they continue to climb and advance regardless of appearance. And then they get to a certain level. And I've experienced this with several clients in the running for CEO positions. You get to that certain level where it becomes very competitive. And every point matters, right? And how do you make sure that you're firing on all cylinders? And if it hasn't been addressed previously, suddenly it's like, I've got to cover this, and this. These pieces weren't critical before because, the pool was larger. And as the pool gets smaller, there are fewer hats in the ring, and it becomes really, really, really important that you're hitting it on all points. Yeah. It's fun to see someone come on the other side of that and go, nailed it.
It's fantastic. Now, I'm sure that it helps when you can go through someone's closet with them, meet with them in person. But as we know, the pandemic changed a lot of businesses. So has it changed your business model, or were you working with people virtually before?
Well, it did change things, and I did reinvent some things myself. But what's interesting is that just prior to the pandemic, I was in the process of shifting my business to an online model.
Wow.
I haven't completed it, mind you, but I was at least on the path, so not quite caught so off guard when we went into lockdown. I had the wheels in motion because I wanted to be able to have a broader reach for the clients that I worked with rather than those only in my backyard.
Yeah.
So versus going into a client's home and maybe doing a one-day consult, what I do now is 6-month coaching packages. And in the coaching program, we're doing everything virtually. We're doing it all online. And including the closet audit, the notebook goes right into the closet. Wow. We've got cameras, so we see what we need. And what's been really fascinating is to see how much more effective the process is now than it was previously. And it's one of those things that they say necessity is the mother of invention. You often don't know what something needs to look like until you're forced to find
to do it.
I was like, okay, then we're going at it this way. Because there was one piece that I really felt like I wouldn't be able to do online. And I was able to actually recreate a face-to-face experience in an enhanced level. So the coach got a few lessons herself in the process.
I think that's one of those things as entrepreneurs, we're always having to refine our processes, who we're working with, how we're working with them. And sometimes we forget to get there because we're so busy doing everything else in our businesses.
Yes.
But that really is the sweet spot when you have that clarity and you're able to go, okay, now I can do this. And it's helping you show up as your full self too, to attract the right clients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What continues to inspire and motivate you to help transform people's lives?
The more that I see clients blossoming into that person that they didn't know they could be, the more excited that I am about just, again, reaching more, further, broader, because I feel like when I see someone unfold in ways that, again, I'm talking about very competent people, but, we all have an area as human beings. We all have this one spot where we think, oh, that's not me. I don't do that. I can't do that. And what I'll hear from my clients is, oh, I didn't get the style gene. That's just not anything I know how to do. And what I like to say is, style can be easy, style can be learned, and style can be fun. And, that's really what we do. We make the process fun as we're going through that program together, and it does become easy. But what it really does is it builds a level of confidence in people to where, I think for any of us, if we conquer something that we thought was not in our wheelhouse, we just kind of sit a little taller and, puff the chest out just a little bit, and it feels good. It feels good. And so it's very gratifying to be able to facilitate that for others.
Wow. Wonderful. So you have a variety of resources on your website, including how best to reach out if somebody wants a consultation and wants to find out how to work with you and work in your coaching program. Is the coaching primarily one-on-one? Is it partially one-on-one, but then also some group work? Or do you also do workshops?
Yes. So I'll share two pieces, actually, since we're talking about the coaching piece. So refinedimages.net, and I know you'll be putting this in the show notes, but refinedimages.net is a lot of the work around professionalism in the workplace and how we show up collectively in that way, and focuses on a lot of the corporate group work that I do. Also, rebootyourstyle.com. It's www.rebootyourstyle.com. And the www actually is important in this one.
Good for noting.
Just puts a lot of extra peek into what I do with my private clients. And in the private coaching, I work primarily with professional women. And in fact, if you would like to share, I can share with your listeners a little gift for that segment as well. And it is a mini course actually that helps. And I will say this one is for the women in the audience.
Okay.
Certainly if the guys would like to access for someone they know who would be interested, they are invited to visit www.bustyourstylerut.com. And the reason that I say it is for women, there are tips in there that apply to everyone, but we do talk a lot in that program about how to choose clothing based on body shapes. And, it is targeted to women in that vein. But there's lots of resources. There's a little something for everyone. And I welcome anyone who has the interest to pop in and peek around and see what appeals.
Wonderful. Yeah, I will make sure that we lift up all of your resources and sites for the different audience members who are listening. You also are a scuba diver?
Yeah, that's one of my fun passions.
Well, we all have to have them. But I love that you weave in how you view your clients as another opportunity to dive below the surface with them. I love the connection you make between what you do for fun and then what you do for work that's also fun for you.
Yes. It is. And that is one of those things that once upon a time, for me, I couldn't imagine, I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. do that. And once, it was the tickle of snorkeling, and I would be on the surface and see those scuba divers down below, their bubbles coming up in my face, and just having the envy of what are they seeing down there that I can't see? So I had to go find out. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that sounds amazing. And that's definitely something I've not explored yet because of the fear factor, but I have also been intrigued by reading that and hearing you talk about this. I'm like, okay, maybe I do need to check that out my next holiday.
Well, so this is the one thing I will say about that, because you can take a lot of resort courses at a destination, but, I am an advocate for being fully trained and certified before going into the deep water. And it gives a safer experience because there's not so much unknown, and you learn how to respond should a situation arise. But in terms of, I do want to say this to speak to the fear factor, because one thing that I did not understand before training is that if I'm at depth and something kind of doesn't go well, I could be at 40 feet or more, and I can fully ascend to the surface all in one exhale.
Wow.
I don't know how many people are like this. My only fear about it was, well, I could drown down there.
Right.
I could drown down there. As long as I remember to keep breathing. So if that helps you at all.
Yes, definitely. Because the drowning factor, they're just being fully underwater. Well, speaking of being fully underwater, if somebody really just doesn't know where to start, they kind of have an idea of who they are. Beyond all of your amazing resources, what are some quick tips that we could share with the audience members?
Here's a few that I will share. One, let's say you are a service professional and you call on clients. If you are the service provider, I highly recommend dressing just one level up to those that you provide service to, and just one level. More than that, being overdressed can be off-putting or in some instances intimidating, but just a little bit so that you're showing reverence for the work that you're doing, for the way that you appreciate their business and the relationship that you have.
Okay.
And that goes for both in person or behind the web screen. Specific to online, I like to coach clients to think about something called silent dressing, because when we're working on camera, as many of us do now, we have a much smaller frame of reference, and we don't have the benefit of, full body nonverbal communications and gestures and all of those sorts of things. So we want to keep the attention the best that we can. It's easy to get bored, right? When we're like looking all day.
Right.
And silent dressing is one way to, when you're engaging with someone, to keep the focus and attention on your message. And it means both figuratively and literally. So literally avoiding jangly jewelry or fabrics that squeak when they rub together that could make someone on the other side of the camera like wondering, what is that? What's going on? And then suddenly they're not hearing what you're saying because they're thinking about they're trying to figure out what's happening. And then the other distraction, when we look at silent dressing in a figurative way, it could mean keeping patterns and prints subtle and understated on camera, because the busier a print or a pattern, the more visually distracting it can be. And I might lose attention there too on your verbal message if I'm trying to figure out, it's a beautiful scarf. What is the design of that? And I'm curious, and as humans are, and suddenly I'm not listening to you anymore. I didn't catch myself doing it, and you didn't intend for that to happen. But as we maintain a more subtle environment to where the focus can really stay on what's spoken, we can get more done, surely.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those. And important to think about. I was even thinking I really need to have a little tray on my desk where I have my jewelry that I can wear when I'm on camera on these Zooms, but then I can take them off if I just want to type, and then I can put them back on real fast.
Yes.
Remember, because it is so easy to forget and to get caught up in just, we work from home, we're at our desk, and then maybe we're between meetings, we go take care of our animals or do some things around the house, and we don't want all of those constructs on. I also found a big change when I lived in Houston and was out doing things for my business or for social. I definitely felt like I had to be a lot more put together. And then interestingly, you would think LA is like that, but moving back to Los Angeles, I went, oh, wait, nobody cares if I'm showing up at this event or that event and have my makeup and my hair done perfectly. I can just do the work from the safety of my home or the quiet of my home and get clients that way. But I think there's somewhere in between that I need to get back to.
Yeah. Something that might be helpful there, because I think this is something a lot of people struggle with now, because like you said, I mean, it might be partway during the business day that there's a gap in meetings and, I'll run out, do the grocery shopping. And, I'm going to change it up a little bit and remembering to come back. And one of the things that can be really helpful is there's a body of work called enclosed cognition. And the term was coined back in 2012, 2013, but it's really about understanding how you can be dressing for yourself and becoming cognizant of the effect of what you wear, the effect that has on your own mind patterning and self-perception. Because a lot of studies were done around this and discovered how, we often think of image as, what that projects to others. And that's what we've talked about so far. But it really does also influence our self-perception and how our own personal performance based on how we're dressed. So it's something that's worth kind of looking into. I think if somebody's, wanting to see, does it really make a difference? Do I work any differently if I'm dressed this way versus that way? Take a little Google search on that one, and it may be interesting what you find.
Fantastic. Thank you. You can see I've been taking notes while we've been on this call, because I always love to do that when I have a guest on who's sharing something new to me that this is not my area of expertise. But I'm so grateful that you were able to come on the show and share your expertise with our audience. This, again, isn't something we've covered before, but it's something that's really important, especially because most of our listeners are entrepreneurs and they're going to be looking for funding and they're going to be making presentations. It's very important how you're showing up, and not that just you're showing up physically, but the way that you look really does affect your outlook, your demeanor, how people resonate with you and your message.
For sure it does. For sure. Yes.
Patty, is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience today?
I think really just be mindful and conscious about how you show up visually as you move through your world, because you never know what kind of surprises might come your way.
True.
When someone gets a clear picture about who you are.
That's amazing advice. Thank you for that. And I almost feel like that is a great place to end. But I also just want to see if you have a quote or a mantra or a saying that you live by that you'd like to share with our audience today.
I've got a few favorites. One that I do like a lot is by Anais Nin. And it is, we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are.
Yes.
And it really shines a light on how much we do create in our reality and how much power and influence we have.
Very important words. I could just pick your brain and keep asking you questions. I want to take our Zoom to my closet right now. We're going to have to do some work together.
Annika, we would have so much fun.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, Patty, I so appreciate you being on today. Thank you so much. We'll lift up all the resources for everybody listening in the show notes. Thank you for coming back to our audience for another great, amazing expert interview on Your Brand Amplified. And I'll be back again in a few days with another fantastic person to interview. And in the meantime, check out those resources that Patty is offering to all of us. They will change your life. And I look forward to being back next week. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.